Hi, Friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And welcome back to the Friendoville channel. It's time for yet another Last Dance review. And once again, special guest from Super Shoes. Here he is. Thanks for coming back, Larson.
Kick Kicks. That's what the show's called. Kick Kicks.
Welcome back to the
right.
Kick Kicks.
Or I'm not going to be on next week.
Okay, I'll get it right. Kick Kicks. Anyways.
I guess that name is apropos this week because one of the things talked about in episode 5 of Last Dance was how Jordan, the Air Jordan phenomenon in terms of the shoes, the sportswear, and whatnot, became a thing.
I loved how, his rookie year, of course, he's going to get a shoe deal. He's going to go shopping for a shoe deal.
Which really didn't happen during that time. Like a rookie getting a shoe deal. It didn't happen.
Yeah. What I loved at the time, now obviously we all know how revolutionary Jordan was, his contract with Nike, what happened eventually just completely blew up. They blew it all up, Larson. What was fascinating to me was seeing their description of the shoe market prior to that, how Converse had everybody on lockdown, and they showed this hilariously bad old school rap commercial featuring, the Converse players, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson.
Bernard King.
Yeah. It was hokey as all get out. My favorite bit was when they revealed that he had wanted to be an Adidas guy.
Yeah. And actually, they didn't mention this in Last Dance, and I haven't done any independent verification, but apparently at one point, he was so unhappy with the Jordan 2s that he considered getting out of his deal.
Oh, wow. In what respect? The design, the playability factor?
I just don't think he liked the shoes. I don't know exactly why. I think Jordan 2s are great, especially low top ones. I still have a pair; they're fantastic. But apparently, in this, I had heard the story that he initially wanted to go with Adidas.
They're very basic looking shoes.
Yeah,
I can see why he wouldn't be into those, because the first ones are freaking iconic.
Oh yeah,
and then with the Jordan 2, so that's cool that you like them. That's good. But to me, personally speaking, from a design standpoint, 1 and 3, it's like Super Mario Brothers. 2 is it's not really the flashiest shoe.
Oh yeah. No, I mean 2 is because the same guy I believe designed the first 2, and then it was the third one where Tinker Hatfield became the design lead for Jordans, and it was I think it was a situation where Jordan was about to leave or wanted to leave Nike until he saw the design for what was originally supposed to be called the Air Revolution, I believe, the Jordan 3. Mm-hmm. And then that convinced him to stay. And then, from that point on, I think Tinker designed everything up till, I want to say the 13 or 14. Maybe it was a 15.
I was shocked. I didn't know. Did you know that during that Madison Square Garden game in '98, he decided he went back to the 1s? Mm-mm. Do you remember that happening? Mm-mm. Jesus, the idea of wearing those shoes, playing basketball is terrifying.
That's what he said. He said his feet were all tore up from
it. His feet were all tore. He said they were bleeding. My socks were covered in blood. That was horrible. But yeah, the fact that he wanted to be an Adidas guy, and then Nike just hit him with the best. But they had a computer design shoe and stuff.
Well, he said he didn't want to go to the meeting at first, and it took convincing from his mom. His agent, David Falk, called his mom up, and said, "Hey, convince him." And so basically, his mom said, "You got to go to this meeting. This could be the best opportunity for you." And it sounded like his agent and his mom made him go, and he was impressed enough with the presentation, and also they were going to pay him more than anybody else. That was one of David Falk's things. Like, hey, at the time Nike was a relative upstart. They were doing running shoes pretty much exclusively, or that's what they were known for. And he said, if you're going to want Jordan here, you're going to have to pay, because I guess he said at the time most basketball players, when they got shoe endorsements, were making about $100,000.
Yeah.
I think he said their deal had to be for $250.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And obviously worked out for me. They said the hope was in the first, 4 years, they'd sell 2 million or a million pairs of shoes. It was 126 million.
Yeah.
Dollars in shoes.
Yeah.
So, it worked out. And Jordan's a billionaire now because of Jordan Brand.
Well, that one of my favorite aspects of that section of the doc was all the commercials. The Spike Lee commercials, the Mars stuff. I love that stuff. I love whenever they go back. And again, the soundtrack was absolutely killer during these 2 episodes. I had to kick myself when I remembered that Outkast, the Rosa Parks song was from '98 from the Aquemini album. Because I'm like, Jesus, it's like that was such a long time ago.
It's a great record, man.
No, it is. But But yeah, I love seeing all those retro commercials and stuff, and we got to see the Be Like Mike stuff again, which was absolutely
that bit where Barkley was singing it to Jordan.
Yeah, that was
I could be like Chuck.
That was one thing that kind of bummed me out about just sort of them in general, is that like they were like really, really close, and then because I guess Barkley said that Jordan surrounds himself with yes men, he has said that their relationship really went cold after that. I guess he said that like on an episode of Inside the NBA. And so there has not been a lot of Barkley. This is the first time we've seen Barkley, I think.
Yeah, and it was mostly related to Dream Team and then the finals appearance. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, which was interesting in itself, in that Barkley said, "I played this game. I played the best game I could possibly play, and Michael Jordan outplayed me, and that was the first time I realized there's a better basketball player on this planet than me."
He says, the first time I didn't think I was the best basketball player on this planet. Yeah.
That was
something
shocking.
notable about episode 5, especially, was they had a little bit of an interview with Kobe Bryant in it. They dedicated the episode to him.
Yeah.
He spoke about I believe it's probably his first All-Star appearance in '98, and he talked about his relationship fairly briefly with Jordan. Made it seem like during that experience in '98 at the All-Star game that he started a conversation with Jordan about his turnaround jumper, and he said Mike gave him a really thorough, detailed explanation of whatever the nature of the question was, and says, "Hey, if you need anything, just give me a call."
Yeah.
And it seemingly from there that birthed a pretty close relationship. I know at Kobe's memorial, I think Jordan referred to him as his little brother.
Yeah.
And he says, Kobe said, people always ask, who'd win in a one-on-one game between the two of you. And he said, everything that you guys got from me, I got from him.
Yeah.
And essentially, if it wasn't for all the advice and guidance that Jordan provided him, he might not have been the success that he ended up being.
But I love that Jordan, like in the locker room when he was, and it's funny because they talk about Kobe specifically in the locker room at the All-Star game, because of course they're on the East, and Kobe's in the West, and he said, yeah, that little kid from the Lakers, he's going to shoot and shoot and shoot, and he says, you know what? He said, if it takes you 4 shots, you better get a rebound if you want that ball back, because I'm not giving it to you. So he was shit talking him in the locker room, but it was about that guy. It was about Kobe. He wasn't talking about anybody else. He was talking about that guy, which, showed that they obviously had respect for the reputation that he had coming in.
Yeah. So I think he was in his second or third year. But it must have been second because he was only 19. So it must have been his second year in the league.
Yeah. He was the youngest ever to be in the All-Star game, I think.
Yeah, probably at 19, yeah.
So that was interesting. There was still a little bit that's continuing through the episodes. More shit talk of Jerry Krause.
Yeah.
It wasn't shit talk necessarily, but they made a point when they won their second championship of showing Krause in the locker room being interviewed. And what did he say? Once again,
it's organization thing. Yeah.
It's all the way from the top to the bottom of the organization. The players do their part on the court, but it's really an organizational thing. And you just want to sit there and punch him in his yellow teeth.
Yeah. He's planting the seeds back then.
Oh God. It's so obnoxious.
Yeah. Another interesting thing about episode 5 specifically, too, is Jordan's relationship to Magic Johnson. Highly competitive nature of Magic. Even when he went to the locker room prior to the '98 All-Star game, say hi to Michael, talk some friendly trash to him and Bird prior to the game. And they show a decent amount of the footage from that notorious, infamous, well-known Dream Team practice, I believe in Monte Carlo.
Monte Carlo, yeah.
Where the team led by Magic and Barkley went on a run. They were up at like 8 or 10 points on the Jordan-led squad until Magic started talking some trash to Jordan, and then Jordan just went off.
And to hear Magic get so frustrated about the calls that he said, you know what? They just brought us to the what was the
Chicago Stadium.
Chicago Stadium. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, to hear him, and then how it was tense on the bus until Magic. And it's great because Magic was such a true leader of men. And to see the absolute, and it's funny because you get this the little photo shoot bit, which I think I had seen before with Magic and MJ, and he's telling Bird, he's like, be sure not to touch MJ. They might call a foul, and they're just in the middle of a photo shoot, and they all start laughing. But you see the absolute love that Magic has for the guy who's taken his place as the face of the NBA, Michael Jordan, and it gave him nothing but joy to put Jordan over. And, the realization, especially during that dream team bit was, that was that practice game, they were down by 8 and ended up beating us. It was absolutely the moment we all realized this is his league now. He's the guy.
He was the alpha of alphas. Yeah,
exactly. And there was seemingly no hesitation from Magic. In fact, it was quite the opposite. It was all just, I'm so happy because obviously at that point he knew he was out. He's so happy to be able to have comfort knowing that this guy is the right guy to be leading the way.
Yeah. They did touch on Isaiah Thomas's exclusion from the dream team. Of course, they had a bit with Isaiah. He was like, well, you look at the criteria, I met it all. Jordan says, I guess initially he had a call from Rod Thorne where Rod says, hey, do you want to play on this team? And I guess the first question Jordan asked was, who am I playing with? Who's playing? Yeah. And then Rod's like, why do you want to know? And with the idea, or said, well, not him, with the implication that him was Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah.
And Jordan said, I essentially, I never said no to Isaiah. It's mentioned here that other players had issues with Isaiah Thomas. At that point, Magic Johnson and Isaiah had a falling out after being friends for a good number of years. Scotty was not a fan of him. I wonder if Isaiah had just burned enough bridges at that point, even though the fact that his coach was coaching the team. Yeah. That it was just untenable to have him on the squad.
Well, yeah, apparently. So I was watching a clip on Twitter where Jalen Rose and somebody else was in an interview with the director of this, Jason Mehier, I think his name is, or Meyer. Yeah. And he had said that he had been told also that guys like, so Scotty apparently hated Isaiah Thomas more than even MJ did.
Yeah.
And then Malone had issues with him as well. And he said there were plenty of people. He also made the point that, and it's funny because Jalen Rose kind of called him out on it. He was like, he said they had Magic and they had Stockton.
Yeah.
And Jalen started saying, dude, no, don't tell us that there wasn't room for him. And he said, no, what I was going to say is he was told that Joe Dumars was the guard that they would have wanted because he was a defensive stopper and that's what they needed. And then of course, but everybody else had issues because, obviously Daly was the coach. Yeah. But this is interesting. So, who is this? Tom Ziller, a writer. I think he was here in Sacramento. He was.
The name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he was heavily Sacktown royalty, the SB Nation stuff, and then all the AB 15 stuff happened, and then he ended up going solo. So I subscribed to his newsletter, and he was talking about The Last Dance, and so he was talking about that in that there was a book that Jordan openly contributed to, and I'm trying to find okay, here we go. He said, this is a direct quote from the newsletter. The Isaiah Dream Team stuff is driving me nuts. Jordan and Rod Thorne had previously confirmed in Jack McCallum's book on the Dream Team that MJ insisted that Isaiah not be included. And the rationale, if self-centered, is valid. These guys are going to be together for a month to sell the game of basketball to the world. Shouldn't they like each other? He said that's fine. Again, though, it fits MJ's modus operandi. It's all about Michael. So he seems to think that the way it was described by Michael himself in that book was different than what we got last night in the documentary.
Well, I mean, like Michael said, no, I never said it wasn't. Well, he said it in the Last Dance. It wasn't essentially that it wasn't just me. That he did say, we're going to be playing these games for a number of weeks. There was the camaraderie, the relationship that everybody had was really tight. And he said, do I think if that would have been different if Isaiah was on the team? Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So it's not like he didn't say, I didn't voice any reservations about playing with Isaiah. He more or less just said, it wasn't all me.
Yeah. He sort of sidestepped, like, he doesn't obviously, or he didn't in the documentary want to paint, himself as, hey, I gave him the ultimatum, basically.
Yeah, exactly. He did say, why would I not? Before he said, in terms of the chemistry of the team, he did say, behind Magic Johnson, I consider Isaiah Thomas the best point guard ever. Yeah. Doesn't mean I don't think he's still an asshole, but from an on-court standpoint, it would have made sense to have him on the team. Yeah. But that's when he said, given the chemistry and the relationship and the camaraderie we all had as a team, that would have changed if he were on it.
They touched on the concept of the athlete as role model in this as well.
Especially episode 6. That was a lot of it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I always get mishmashed between the two of But when what was the name of
Slim?
the politician? No, we'll get to Slim in a bit. We'll get to the gambling stuff in a bit. But the Democratic politician.
Oh, Harvey Gantt.
Yeah. Who's running against super racist Jesse Helms, right?
That's correct.
How Jordan didn't. He explained himself in this. He sent him some check basically, but he didn't openly. Yeah. And he mentioned the Republicans buy sneakers too bit. And he says, that was a joke I made. That was a throwaway line. But I actually kind of appreciated his candor in this. Like he said, well, one thing that I thought was funny was there was that old clip, and I don't know who was saying it, but they said, people are going to remember Muhammad Ali. Are they going to remember Michael Jordan? A lot of the stuff when they ended up, criticizing Jordan, whether it be for this or for the gambling, it was from my perspective, growing up as a teenager in the Jordan era, and as a child, I guess, but mainly like when I was like 12, 13, 14, 15, I was really paying attention to Jordan. Mm-hmm. None of that stuff ever bothered me. Like the Be Like Mike stuff, there might have been, and like it was even said in the documentary, sponsors didn't pull away from Michael Jordan because of any of this stuff.
No.
And so in terms of his reputation, now the one point that was made was the consequences that he had to pay was answering questions. And that led into talking about his general exhaustion, which was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. And they're, I don't know what sort of narrative they're going to lay out, although I feel like the groundwork's been laid with episode 6 as far as why he retired following the 93 season, following the death of his father. But if it's the situation where he's already exhausted from the season prior, been faced with a ton of criticism for really the first time in that interview, I don't know whether they didn't say where the interview was from, where he was actually talking about wanting to be a being a role model, and how if he had done it over again, he might have stepped back away from that somewhat, and how he was getting tired of that particular lifestyle. If he was already feeling all that, and then, the circumstances around his father's death, having to face the grief from that, plus because it's obvious his father, he was really close with his parents.
Oh yeah, I mean, he sent his dad out there. His dad said, "Hey, don't take this heat from the media. I'll go out there and take it for you."
Yeah.
Which, you got to, that's a close relationship.
The grieving process of that, just the questions he would have to incessantly answer about that.
Yeah.
Maybe at that point is like, all right, I just kind of want to disappear for a moment, but him still being a competitive individual, he needs an outlet for that. And then he's like, all right, I played baseball in high school. Maybe I'll give this a try again.
Mm-hmm,
yeah. So I'd be interested to see how that's all framed.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
They seem to dispel of there's those rumors going around that he didn't retire, he was suspended, and those are completely for gambling, which are completely unsubstantiated. And they had David Stern on here, and he was talking about the gambling put forth in that dude's book, and he said, we looked into it. It seems like a lot of money, but it didn't seem to be a concern for the league.
Yeah, he said it wasn't an epic crisis.
Yeah, he said he was betting on golf.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't betting on anything. He wasn't betting on sports, and that's what Jordan said. He said, it's cards and golf. That's what I'm gambling on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what Stern meant by a crisis, in that he wasn't betting on basketball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
that was really interesting stuff, the gambling stuff. Because it's funny because Jordan could have easily tried to project the Puritan thing, but to try to become the first billionaire athlete, if you will. But he didn't. He said, "Hey, this is who I am. I like to gamble. It's a good outlet for me. It's fun." Ahmad Rashad even said, $10,000 for, or was it him or David?
It was No, it wasn't David Stern. It was somebody else.
No. God, Aldridge.
Oh yeah, it was Aldridge. Yeah.
Okay.
10
said,
grand, yeah.
$10,000 for Jordan is like $10 for you.
He's got it. He's good for it. Yeah.
He's good for it. I do appreciate when Ahmad Rashad did that interview. Who's like, why did he have to wear those sunglasses? That didn't help anything.
Yeah, I know. That was pretty funny.
What are you hiding over there? So that was interesting stuff, how he stuck to his guns. He's like, look, I like to gamble. It ain't hurting anybody. My wife ain't leaving me. I don't have to pawn this watch. I'm fine.
Well, he seemed to frame it seemingly fairly accurately. He said, I don't have a gambling problem. I have a competition problem.
Yeah, right.
Like there's nothing seemingly, and that seems to be how it was framed in the show, where he'd be in the back of the plane with Ron Harper gambling for thousands of dollars. And then he'd go up to the front of the plane with John Paxton and Will Perdue, who are playing dollar hands of blackjack and want to get in on it. And they're like, this is peanuts.
The best.
Essentially gambling with. He's like, I just want the feeling of knowing that I have my money, your money in my pocket.
The best was the coin against the wall flip stuff.
Yeah.
Against the security guard.
Yeah.
And the security guard took his money away.
And then gave him the shrug.
That was close. Somebody had a pretty clever tweet about that one, too.
Yeah.
It was like, top champions of the 90s, and it was like, Jordan Malone, somebody else, and then that guy.
Jordan, Kobe. They're all shrugging. It was Jordan, Kobe, Steph.
Yeah.
And then that guy, yeah.
That was good stuff.
That was pretty good. So this latest episode, 6th at 1, ends following their third championship in 93, following 93 season, and on the brink of the playoffs in 98. So I would assume the next episodes we're going to get into him retiring for the first time, the death of his father, playing baseball. So that will be a particularly interesting section, mirroring that kind of the beginning of the end of his second run in the Bulls, or with the Bulls. So
yeah, what do you think of the bit where Randy Brown always seemed like a every time I've seen clips of Randy Brown, he seems like kind of a tool. There was that, remember when they won I think it was the first championship when he came back.
All right.
And at the very end, he grabbed the game ball, and he wanted it to like memorialize his dad. And Randy Brown came in and tried to take it from him while he's on the ground crying. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah. And then in this, he's like bugging Jordan for tickets.
Yeah.
And Jordan.
Well, the way they put that is like the ticketing guy was like Randy Brown wasn't the only one on that segment that was going in that room where Jordan's sitting at a desk, and in the middle drawer he has a bunch of tickets.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was like several people. So I'm not to say that Randy Brown might not be a bit of a jerk or a tool, as you put it, but he
doesn't seem like a jerk. He seems oblivious. That's what he's seen. I don't know. He just comes off like that whenever I've seen clips of him, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because he played for the Kings at some point, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, and maybe that's why I clue in.
I think prior to this, he played for the Kings.
Yeah. But when he says, I don't care if they're right next to God up there in the nosebleeds. I'll take whatever you got.
Right next to who?
God. He's like, who do you think just gave you the ticket?
Yeah.
And then immediately Jordan's like, don't air that. Don't put that anywhere. And Randy Brown's like, no, you need to run that.
Yeah.
That was fun. But yeah, again, that just plays into it's fascinating to see at this point when they've won 3 titles, Jordan is a completely different person, from when from even when they first got into the playoffs. He seems like a completely different, like he's getting to that status. But yeah, the exhaustion is very interesting. It is going to be interesting to see how they frame it in the next episodes.
Yeah, the motivation, how he explains the motivation behind his first retirement. I guess if you look at it in a very human sense, he's exhausted. His dad dies. He's insinuating even before all that happened that this might be coming to an end. And at that point, this emotionally, it's probably just too much, and he probably just. I'm done.
You could feel like the exhaustion. I mean, not just there's that scene where he's on the couch, but even when they've won the third championship, and they're just like, I think it was John Paxson was saying, at that point it was just sort of relief as opposed to joy. Like we weren't getting any joy out of it. It was just relief.
Well, he was asked about that in the post game where they said, is this relief or is there actual joy here? And Jordan says, or is it a mixture of both? And he says, yeah, it's a bit of both.
Yeah. Yeah. But you kind of feel that, I wonder if that's a diplomatic answer, in that it's just like, man, I'm so tired. I'm just happy that it's over with, I wanted to ask you this question because they touched on it a little bit. Right. When I think Jordan and Ahmad Rashad were driving to maybe a game or a practice.
Yeah, 98. Jordan's Range Rovers before the playoffs, yeah.
And he talks about, I think he said Patrick Ewing said he wants them to drag him off the court. And Jordan said, I don't want that to happen. I want to walk off the court.
He essentially said, I want to retire about 2 years before I'm done.
Which is kind of an interesting juxtaposition in some way to when he said, you have the championship until you lose it.
Yeah.
What would you rather do? Retire as a champion at the top of your game, quit when you're at the top, or keep going until somebody takes it out of your hands?
Well, I think there's a difference between playing until, let's say he kept on playing and won 3 or 4 more championships, just hypothetically speaking. I guess a lot of it would depend on how much you think you have left in the tank. Now, if he thought, I have 4 more years left in the tank, but I want to walk away while I'm still at my playing peak, not necessarily champion, but my playing peak. Mm-hmm. So if 2 years down the line is when Jerry Krause initiated his grand plan to rebuild the Bulls in strictly his image, that might have been a situation where Jordan might have been more at peace. We're like, all right, it's time to step away. Mm-hmm. But even that part in the couch, where he said he's getting tired of that particular lifestyle, where he travels to a city, he has to sit in the hotel room all day, lest otherwise he's mobbed by hundreds of people everywhere he goes. I guess personally speaking, there's a certain amount of romanticism involved with going out on top, as opposed to getting pulled off the field or court kicking and screaming, because that's kind of what you know, and that's pretty much the only thing you know.
Yeah.
And you want people to remember you at your best, not in the waning days of your career when you can barely, get out there and play 15 minutes and score 10 points.
Well, I think there's two things. There's, do you play until you can't anymore? But then also, if you're a champion, do you go out on top, or do you wait until there's that next team? Like they were talking about how the Knicks were trying to be,
Yeah. Well, I think for Jordan, I think for him, I think his fear was not being the best every single day he was out there.
Yeah.
And if he felt like he was on the verge of going out there and not being the best player in the world, then that would be when he would probably step back. I think they're not mutually exclusive things.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
You know, where he probably still really does feel, all right, this is our championship until someone takes it off us.
Yeah.
But if he got to the point where they're still winning titles, but he felt like, there's some days where I'm going out there and I don't feel like the best player on my team, much less on the whole court. Yeah. I think in the end, it's one thing to win the title, but for him, he's upset when someone other than him wins the MVP award. You know, he feels like not only does it be the best in terms of holding the trophy and having those rings on his fingers, but he wants the perception of him as the best, full stop.
I wonder how Jordan would have handled it had he been in a Magic situation, where there was obviously, because when Magic had to retire, he was still really good. But, he was forced into it because of the HIV thing. I wonder how Jordan would have handled it if there was another team that came up and took it from him. The way Magic handled it, which was with pure class and grace, and almost like gratitude that it was somebody like Michael Jordan. How Jordan would have handled, another Michael Jordan, because there really wasn't anybody. There wasn't anybody like at the time.
I mean, initially, we've seen him just in this documentary. If there's a threat, he puts it down. And I guess the real challenge would be if it got to the point where his skills had diminished to such an extent where he couldn't put it down, and that might be a situation where he's like, okay, maybe I've overstayed my welcome at this point. Yeah.
You would think if their paths had crossed earlier, Jordan would have been okay putting Kobe over the way Magic put him over perception wise, You would think that probably.
You think about, granted, LeBron came to the league a few years after Kobe, but maybe they're in the same situation then too, where he sees a player who is a continuation potentially of his own legacy. Yeah. He realizes, all right, I'm not gonna be able to do this at this high of a level forever. It's time to, bring about the next generation. Yeah. But maybe at a certain extent, he's willing to do that, just not at his direct expense. As in, he's not going to allow Kobe's team to beat him, Yeah. Like, I'll step away and I'll mentor players. Yeah. But I'm not going to let them actually beat me.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be. I would think that, like, seeing how, he had dealt with the poor sportsman vibe of the Pistons and how he was so anti that, you would think that he'd step aside gracefully if there was another team or if there was another individual.
I think he would publicly, but I think as we've seen with him, he doesn't like to lose.
Yeah.
And if he did lose, he probably wouldn't be very happy about it.
Yeah.
Publicly, he would probably in the end of the day do the right thing, but he'd be like, oh, gosh.
Yeah.
It would eat him up, I think.
Probably. You're probably right. Anyways, thanks for joining me once again.
Sure thing.
We'll be back next week with episodes.
Name my shoe show, right? And then we'll be back next week. Yeah.
Kick shoes. It's perfect.
Kick kicks. That's your last warning.
Keep on forgetting.
Kicks.
All right.
Same word twice.
I'm just going to stop saying it. Anyways, thanks everybody for tuning in. Appreciate it. Till next time, we'll talk to you later.
Goodbye.